Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Hello, everyone in podcast listening land. I'm Karen Devaney.
And I'm Ann Varner. And we're sisters. Welcome to Sugar-Coated Murder, where we'll discuss
and probably inappropriately laugh about and comment on.
Yep, one of our favorite subjects.
Murder. Oh, and we love to bake. And why not combine our two favorite subjects?
Baking
and killers. Anything but murder, Shorty.
It's a podcast episode where we talk about anything but murder.
Yes.
And today we have a very, very special guest.
We're so excited.
We have my very, very best friend from high school, all the way from Virginia, Miss Marti.
Yay. Hey, Marti.
Hey,
welcome.
guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for traveling all the way here.
Just for this.
Just for this.
Wow. And then you're going.
Then
See
I'm going.
you later.
Yeah, bye. Just to do this, and then I'm leaving.
Yeah, that's it. We got nothing else for you. And, of course, you'll hear Trout soon because he will not be able to withhold himself.
He's very excited.
Yeah, he's so excited about this. So today, instead of talking about murder, we are going to talk about some funny jobs we've had.
Funny jobs.
Yeah,
yes.
So in our old age, we've had plenty of jobs, some that were funny, some that were sad and not funny at all, and then some that we accepted.
And then one of the reasons we decided to do this Shorty with Marti is because Marti used to work with me at my dad's drugstore. He owned a little drugstore in the heart of our hometown, and Marti used to work there with me. So we got to share that zany job together.
Didn't y'all work at Rose's together?
We don't want to talk about that.
I worked at Rose's.
I started it at Rose's, but only lasted a week before I quit.
Okay.
Did I make it a whole week?
I think you made it through training and then maybe one day and that was it.
So
that was it.
I'm out.
No more.
No more.
So we're going to start with Marti because I think she's got something funny to share with us about one of her jobs.
Okay, so it was like the summer of '88. I didn't have anything planned after I got out of college my freshman year that summer. And my brother, who was living in Waynesboro, Virginia at the time, reached out and said, I've got the perfect job for you. You can come live with my wife at the time and me up in Waynesboro and work at the Hershey plant in Stewart's Draft, Virginia.
Oh my gosh, how exciting.
That's a dream job.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought, okay, I'd just be selling chocolate in the little gift store that they had. But
yeah.
No.
I was thinking like the Ethel Lucy at the chocolate factory, maybe.
Yes, it was more that.
I was thinking you could be a professional taster.
That would be
my dream
good.
job.
Yeah, well, isn't that what Lucy and Ethel did in the end?
I think
they
were
tasted
that. Yeah, only because they were trying to hide where they weren't packaged.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. The belt went too fast. So I worked there for the summer of '88 and spent the summer living in Waynesboro with my sister-in-law and brother. My sister-in-law was pregnant with my first nephew at the time. He was due that fall. So it's my first job ever of this kind, working in a factory. And of course, when you work in a factory and you work around food, you have to have the headgear and the foot gear. So I had to wear that hairnet.
Like a paper one?
No, they were like they weren't paper. They were like a
net?
Like a net.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
and
a lunchroom.
Like a lunch lady
hairnet. That's
lunch
beautiful.
lady hairnet. And then I had to wear some of the same things on my shoes. And then I had to wear a hard hat on top of the hairnet.
That's beautiful.
Right. And then you couldn't wear
Did
outside.
your hard hat look like a Hershey Kiss?
No, it did not look like a poop.
That's a shame.
It didn't look like a
I guess that would have been pretty bad. Okay.
It was just a white hard hat.
Okay.
Because you had to walk around this equipment that made the chocolate and the bars and the...
So you were all in white?
I was not in white.
Ah.
I had a jumpsuit that I had to wear over my street clothes because we couldn't wear street clothes around the plant because you couldn't bring in dirt and all that stuff.
Was it navy blue like Michael Myers?
It was a navy blue Michael Myers jumpsuit.
Oh, no.
Yes.
I'm just happy that they didn't make you wear white because at the end of the day, I would have had like chocolate fingerprints all over me. my jumpsuit. And they would have been like,
What
gotta
have
get
you
that
been
one clean again. So that was smart on their part.
So you were really working like the inner circle of the Hershey
You were
family.
in the
Did you
innards.
have to sign a non-disclosure agreement?
I did. I could not share any of these recipes, so you guys cannot ask me for any Hershey recipes.
Oh my gosh.
Like I could remember them. How many years ago was that?
Plus, they were making them in huge vats. So you'd be like, okay, you need 13 gallons of cocoa.
How do I divide that out to just make one serving?
Yes, exactly. That's awesome.
So I'm not much of a morning person, so they needed somebody to work either the 3 to 11 shift or the 11 to 7 shift. So I was making chocolate throughout the night and the morning. I really liked the 11 to 7 shift, and I'd get home and I would sleep most of the day and get up in the afternoon and do some fun stuff, see Waynesboro while I was there. The biggest thing for me was that summer I learned how to drive I had just gotten a little used car, and I had to learn how to drive stick shift.
Oh, yeah.
And I did great at home, flat laying.
So was
then
this
I went
the summer
to the
before you went to college?
No, this was the summer after my freshman year of college.
Oh, you came home from college and then, okay.
Yeah. I didn't have anything to do that summer.
Right.
So my brother said, come live with me and work at the Hershey plant, because that's where my sister-in-law worked. She worked in the IT department. So I learned how to drive real stick shift up in the mountains. And that's where you really learn how to do it.
When you stump on a hill.
Yes,
oh, gosh,
absolutely.
that is nerve-wracking.
So I would drive to and from Waynesboro to Stuarts Draft every night and then drive back in the morning. I was on one of the cookie bar lines.
Okay.
And I can't remember if it was whatchamacallit or Bar None. I can't remember. But I was in charge of watching the bars go down the belt. And if any of the bars were broken, I had this little suction cup thing that I had to pick the bars out if they were broken.
Oh, no.
And then I had to put it into like a barrel with all the broken bars.
Did they count the broken bars? Because I think some of them might have ended up in my mouth.
Yeah. No, they had cameras all over the place.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
Big Hershey brother is watching.
Let me test this one.
This one broke, smashed. Sorry.
Yeah. But sometimes those little gripper things, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, my eyes would get real heavy, and the broken bars would start going past me. I know I had to have 100%.
Did you run after them?
Well, there was a little button you could push to stop.
Oh, my gosh.
But you didn't want to push it because then all the bars got backed up, and the person that was sending the bars to you would have to come and reprimand you because all the bars were backing up.
You're stopping production.
Yeah, and
That's
then
a lot of pressure.
there were a couple of times that I did feel like Lucy, and I just wanted to take the bars and shove them in my mouth. But I did pretty good on that line. And then towards the end of the summer, they moved me to the Reese's Pieces line. That wasn't as exciting.
No.
Because my vision really wasn't that good, those little things. And we had to make sure all the little candies.
They didn't have any cracks.
Right. Cracks or half dipped or.
Oh, no.
It was crazy.
I would need like a giant magnifying
I would
glass.
think that they would put it under that.
Right. It would come out of the dipping, and then they would spread over this whole big wire rack, and it would go under a cooling system to dry it really cool, really quick. And then they would come out and you'd be looking, and
oh my gosh,
like it made me dizzy. So that was fun. I really liked being on that bar line though. That was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
Now, for some reason in my mind, and it might just be that I made it up in my mind because I really wanted you to be the person. But at one point, did you tell me a story about them lowering people into a harness to clean the mixer?
Yes, they did. Those were the littler people. I was not a little person. Those were the Oompa Loompas that they had.
They had their own Oompa Loompas.
They actually lowered people into those big mixers to clean them.
Marty, I'm so disappointed you didn't get to do that.
I was on the heavy side.
No,
but that summer I did lose weight because I was like, the smell of chocolate just disgusted me. So I actually went back to college my sophomore year, a little smaller than I had been freshman year.
Yeah.
But then the sophomore 60, I guess it was, came back.
And then I also remember, but Marty and I were inseparable, even though we went to 2 different colleges. She was way more successful at her college career back then than I was. I've since gotten it together. But I went and stayed with you at your brother's house. Yeah. And you went to work and I went to bed. And I can remember being sound asleep and all of a sudden having this big waft of chocolate.
And you thought,
and I opened my eyes and there's this shadowy figure in the room in this jumpsuit, and we all know I am
gosh.
terrified of Michael Myers.
Yes.
And I know in my mind, I know he's just a character in a movie, but I have an irrational fear of him, and I have.
terrifying.
He is terrifying. And I think I was very startled.
Did it
Very
make you feel
startled.
better knowing that it was just me in a blue jumpsuit? Has that helped?
It did.
Okay.
No.
Now,
No.
but she's still scared of Michael Myers.
I'm extremely afraid of
She's
Michael
just not
Myers.
scared of you and your chocolatey goodness.
It was really hard to be afraid of you with all the chocolate smells coming on.
I was just so sweet.
You were exuding.
That is the
chocolate
funnest
goodness.
job.
That's
Yeah.
a great job.
It was a lot of fun. So that wasn't really a oops job or I hated that job. It was good money because you were working
Sure.
shift work, and that late shift was
got extra.
the best paying, and being a college student, you really needed that going into the next year.
Yeah.
So in high school, Marty worked with us at my dad's pharmacy. What do you remember about working there?
Counting pills,
A lot of pills counting.
trying all of the makeup, the newest makeup
Yes.
that came out.
And nail polish. We used to
Nail
paint our
polish.
nails and then put the nail
Yes.
polish back on the shelf.
Oh my God, yes.
And the funny thing is prior to my visit this weekend, I was sending Ann pictures that we took growing up. And I said, the kids these days know nothing about selfies. Selfies back then were really hard to take because you had film and you had to wait, send it off, and see what they were like when they came back.
Yes.
So turning that actual camera around and getting a selfie, a good one,
and
was
seeing
really-
and being able to filter it, there was
Right.
no filtering.
Yeah, there was- you got what you got.
You got what
Exactly.
you got.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
And God help you if you thought they were going to be awesome and got the triple
Right.
prints, and then you got them and nothing was good, and you would just pay for 3 prints of 25
Or
different
you
pictures that were
overexposed
awful.
the film and
Yes.
there were no pictures.
Yes.
Totally wasted money. So I remember turning in our film at Tart Pharmacy and getting the developments back there and the makeup
Absolutely.
and counting pills. And anytime we needed a snack, we were able to get something.
Yes, we certainly were.
Yes.
And I
That was back in the candy section. There
Back-
were Lance. We had Lance.
a lot of Lance products.
And all the Hershey
Anytime
bars.
anybody wanted something, we would grab it off the shelf and hand it to them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you were thirsty, we had the key to the drink machine.
Absolutely.
So we would just go open the drink machine, grab a
And
soda,
get it.
and then close it
And then
back.
grab a soda for whoever else was
We
standing
never
around.
once paid for a soda at that store.
No, not at
It
all.
was crazy.
Yes, it was wonderful.
And I remember counting pills, and I was terrible at it. And I'm left-handed, so Daddy even got a left-handed pill
counter for you.
And I would get through counting all of the pills, and then he would say, "Is that 100 pills?" And I'd look at him and I'd say, "Yes." And he would take his glasses down to the tip of
Yep.
his nose and he'd say, "Ann Varner, is that 100 pills?" And I'd be like, "I got to count again."
Yeah.
So I'd have to start over.
He used to do that to me, except he would tell me, okay, count out 50 pills. And I'd say, okay, they're done. And he'd say, how many pills did you count out? I don't know. However many you told me. I was like, no, I need to know how many you counted. Well, what did you tell me? You start over. I need 50.
And
So it was a lot of pressure.
and he was amazing because he was so fast with
He
counting.
could count like 8 at a time and count like
At
8s or
least.
6s or whatever.
And now these days, pharmacists have a machine. They just
Yeah.
pour the pills in, the machine counts it, it spits
Yeah.
it out.
They got
No,
it easy again.
It's so
They
easy.
do.
These
Yes.
millennials, they just don't know.
Yeah,
have
because
no
I can
idea.
also remember when Daddy would mix up like syrups or
Yes.
salves
Yes. Yes.
and different ointments and stuff, and he knew like what chemicals went with what, and
Mm-hmm.
that was just amazing that he did that. And he had a lot of the old syrups that he didn't use anymore, but he had them back there in all those old bottles, and it was
Mm-hmm.
really fascinating.
Yeah, he was amazing with all of that stuff. And do you remember when the pill bottles would come in?
Oh, yes, I do.
So the pill bottles came in all different sizes, and you got the bottle, and then you got a bag of lids. And Daddy would have us put the lids on the bottle, and then we had to place them in drawers by size.
Well, I can remember being young, very young, and he would bring them home on Saturday mornings. I would sit and watch cartoons.
Right.
And I would put the lids on the bottles and then give him the bag to take back.
Where were the child labor laws?
There were none.
He should have paid you for that.
He did.
I'm sure
he
he
paid
did.
me in Lance and Hershey and makeup and cosmetics,
That is true.
perfume,
I didn't
any
think about
nail
that.
polish, sodas, anything.
Sodas, yeah.
So I did get paid very well, very handsomely for that. And eventually we did get paid but we got added to the schedule. And I was very lucky that Daddy knew enough about my personality not to put me out front waiting on customers.
He did not.
I took over I did his books. I was his bookkeeper.
Oh.
So I was in the back office and only on very rare occasions was I up front to cover somebody when they went to lunch, or, if somebody was sick, he'd have me come in and get me to cover as much as possible. But he was smart enough not to let me
That surprises me, Karen.
interact with the customers. But I did have some interaction with the customers, and I'm going to tell you one that left an indelible mark on me. Daddy had he had all different customers from all walks of life, and I think this was a very early introduction for us into different cultures and different economic status, or I don't even know what you want to it's not a class of people by any means, but all different walks of people in all different economic situations.
Right.
And he had a really good, kind heart, and he had a lot of customers that couldn't afford their medicine.
Right.
And he had this long notebook that sat beside the cash register. And when somebody would come in that couldn't pay for their medicine, he would just say, write their name, write the prescription, put this amount, and put the date.
Right.
And if they got around to coming in and paying him, he would go mark it off as paid. But if they didn't, he had a lot of customers that would bake for him at Christmas. I mean, we used to have the counter in the back where we used to wrap the gifts would be covered in so many goodies. And then we also had a guy that washed our cars, a guy that did our lawn, a person that
I think that we had a housekeeper that worked off some of
that stuff. And then we also there was a farmer somewhere, because we used to get these huge bags of corn on the cob.
Right.
And I can remember when that bag would come in, it would be taller than me, and it would sit on our back porch. And then whenever we were instructed, we would go and shuck a dozen ears of corn for our dinner that night. But I mean, just huge bags. And so this one gentleman, I will call him for the sake of my daddy's up in heaven listening.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just remembered we also had a gentleman that was like our taxi service.
Oh, he was our driver.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is interesting because we, as we've stated before, grew up in a very, very small southern town. Everybody knew everybody for the most part. And we kind of came off as a well-off family.
Which was hysterical.
We were well off, and we never told anybody otherwise.
No.
But I could see where people would think that, because we had a man that would drive us places if we needed to.
Not only did he drive us, but he actually came down to Raleigh and picked me up at school when I didn't have a ride to come home.
Yes, he did.
And he would drive me home.
And he was a little creepy.
He got a little creepy to the point, at one point, he was calling me every Saturday evening when our parents were at the country club.
Right.
And they would socialize every Saturday and leave us kids at home. And we would watch, I'm going to tell you, Hee Haw, Lawrence Welk,
yes,
and wrestling.
And we had those little mini pizzas that they would leave us to cook.
Yes, little mini pizzas. They were Mama Rosa's pizzas.
Mama Rosa.
And every once in a while we would get pot pies.
Yes.
Except I wouldn't eat pot pie, so I got a blueberry pie.
But you did.
I wouldn't eat anything all mixed up like that.
And they were like Morton's or something we wouldn't touch today. But back then we were like, we would stop.
The TV dinner kind of.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. So this man, he started calling our house during Lawrence Welk and wanted me to watch Lawrence Welk with him on the phone. It was a little creepy until my daddy said, you can't call my daughter. It's not okay.
Yeah.
So, he had to kind of draw a line. And this guy was he was probably as old as my dad.
Right.
Close to it. He lived with his mom. I think he was just a special person.
Okay.
And couldn't live on his own, but could drive and everything. But he had just always lived with his mother.
Right.
And I think that he was very lonely, but, I didn't know how to handle it. So I, of course, would never be rude to him on the phone. So I think he was picking up signals that weren't really there.
Yeah.
But, and I mean, I was
back
young.
then we didn't have caller ID.
No.
There was, so you didn't know who you were getting. You just answered the phone.
And if you picked up the phone and some older man said, "Can I speak with Karen?" you'd say, "Yes, sir," and hand me the phone.
Sure.
Like nobody questioned it.
Right.
So eventually Daddy had to say, you can't, you gotta not do that.
Right.
So, I think my cake is out. Yeah.
Yeah, even though we're doing a shorty, we're doing...
Of course, we're still baking.
We
take a break from murder, but we do not take a break from baking. So anyway, just to get back to the customer that left an indelible mark on my soul.
Yes.
His name was Ferocious Hill.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know why his mama named him Ferocious, but he was ferocious. And he definitely... had a very grumpy personality, and I was scared of him.
Right.
And he came in one day, and he didn't speak very clearly, and I had a really hard time understanding him. And so it was just me and Daddy that day, and Daddy was up in the pharmacy area, or the pharmacist area, and I was waiting on Mr. Hill. Of course, I called him Mr. Hill. And he came in, and he said something. I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand you." And he said something else, and I said, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know are you here to pick up medicine? And then I said, "Do you need to speak to my daddy?" And he took his cane and smacked it on the counter and started yelling at me. And Daddy came down and he said, "Karen Devaney, what have you said to Mr. Hill to make him so angry?" And I was like, "Daddy, I was just trying to understand what he was saying." Of course, Daddy understood, and he's like, "He's here for his medicine." I said, "Okay, I'm so sorry." But I was so afraid of him. And of course, the customer was always right.
Oh, sure.
So I must have said something to Mr. Hill to make him pissed off at me. And he was fired up. Well, I will tell you from that day forward, because he always came in the back door, Mr. Hill did.
Yeah.
And if he came in that back door, I went and hid at the front of the store, in the pharmacist area. I don't care if I was in my office and he would in the back, and he would come through the back door. If I saw him, I would just very gently close and lock my door. I was terrified of that man after that.
Mr. Ferocious was ferocious.
Hill, yeah. And when he left, Daddy said he's a mean old man, but the customer is always right.
Yes.
And I said, "Daddy, I know, but I didn't understand him." So he wasn't right, because he wasn't saying words that I could understand. He was like, "That's not his problem. That's your problem." I was like, "Oh."
I will say it laid the foundation for our work ethic.
Oh my gosh, yeah, because Daddy,
our patience and our customer service skills, which by the way are impeccable.
Impeccable, of course, yes. So between Mama trying to teach us etiquette and Daddy trying to teach us customer service,
I think we did all right.
At some point, something stuck
somewhere,
and then they tried to teach their friends who were not as mannerish.
And I think we've done well.
I think we did a great job.
Thank you, darling.
That's right. You've landed yourself a great life.
Pinkies off.
So what was your craziest job, Karen Devaney?
So, I mean, definitely working at Tart Pharmacy was pretty crazy, but I didn't have anything to compare it to, so I thought it was normal. And I also thought it was normal for me to say, "Daddy, I want to go to the beach today. Can you just bring my work home and I'll do it tonight?" And he'd say, "Okay." And so, not a great work ethic, but after college, I chased my, at that time, boyfriend up to Pennsylvania where he was living. He's now my husband, by the way. And went up there and lived. In the beginning, I sold Merle Norman makeup.
Yeah, you sure
and
did.
So I gave makeovers to women. I would teach them how to put their makeup on, which was hysterical. But, I mean, I had learned from the Clinique counter, because when you turned a certain age, Mama took you to Virginia Beach to the Clinique counter and got you all set up, and they taught you how to do your makeup, and you got the whole kit and caboodle.
That's right.
And then
until you realized after high school
that you couldn't afford it.
You couldn't afford it because in high school your daddy paid for it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then after the Merle Norman job, a tragedy happened at the Merle Norman office, and I couldn't go back in anymore. Because I was too scared. So I got this job, and I'll be damned if I know how I found this job, but it was a job where in Lancaster, they had the state had come in and dropped these modular homes out in the middle of Amish country. And in these modular homes were these clients. The house that I worked at were it was an all-female house, but these women were in their 60s and above, and they had been products of the Pennsylvania state mental situation. And so Geraldo and a couple other reporters had gone in undercover to report on the deplorable conditions these people were living in.
Right. And they were deplorable, really bad situations.
A lot of these homes were shut down. But once they were shut down, they had all of these people that had been there for so many years, and they had no family.
Right.
So these women were sent to live in this home. They wanted to give them dignity. They wanted them to be a part of a community. And they needed advocates, but they also they were not developmentally mature enough to live on their own and be independent. They were nonverbal.
So they were dually diagnosed. They had a mental health concern as well as they were intellectually disabled.
Yeah, and when you say mental health, it may not be something that we would look at as mental health. There was one lady that had put in this institution because she had Tourette's.
Which back then they thought were just crazy fits.
Exactly.
Right.
And so by the time she got out, she was well into her 60s. She had an elderly brother still, but of course her parents were gone.
Right.
And he was not able to take care of her. There was another lady in there and so this Tourette's lady had become nonverbal from the trauma.
I'm sure.
So she would when her Tourette's would kick in, she would say ball. You knew she was having an episode because she would say ball and candy and walk backwards. And that's how you knew Mary was having a situation.
Right.
So, and then there was another lady in there who was never verbal, and we're not sure why she was in there. She was not verbal when we got her. None of her records indicated that she was ever verbal. And we don't know. She couldn't communicate with you at all.
Wouldn't even try to?
No. So with Mary, you could say, Mary, do you want cereal today for breakfast? And she could nod her head.
Right.
She could indicate to you some type of communication for the most part. But this lady you could give her direction and she could follow direction.
Right.
But she couldn't, she was completely nonverbal and she wouldn't initiate communication with you. So what her favorite thing to do was to sit at the table and color. And she would color for 24 hours a day if you let her. When it came to meals, we would have to tell her we have to put these books away so you can eat.
Did she ever get angry?
She never got angry. We had one lady in there that was, she was quite angry. And she had gone in at the age of 19 into this institution. She was verbal. She was educated. She wrote in cursive. They think maybe she was having some depression issues. They don't know because her parents literally dropped her off and left, and they never came back from her.
That's so
For
sad.
her, nobody ever came to see her, and she went through she had a lot of scars from the trauma that she had gone through, and she was a selective mute.
Yeah.
So and she loved to cuss, so she would write cuss words in cursive at you.
They were beautiful then.
She had beautiful handwriting. But if you made her mad, she wanted to eat all the time, and she was obsessed with coffee, and she had a lot of stomach issues, so that she was off of caffeine. But she would go, and we had to keep the coffee in the tallest shelf above the microwave, and she would get a chair if you didn't watch her and stand up and get a spatula and get that coffee down, and she would literally dump the coffee grounds into her mouth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and eat them. And then you would say, Dot, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's bad for you. And she would sit down and write cuss words at you because you wouldn't let her have it. And I felt really bad, but we were their advocates. So we
I was
going to
say, what was your role at the center? Because I know for a fact you have zero medical background.
Zero background.
Zero patience for people.
No patience for people. I think illness is weakness.
Oh my gosh.
I was a business major in college. I had no social degree, no social work, no psychology, no nothing. I was they just needed warm bodies at this point.
It's a hard place to be
and
in.
it was a hard place and you had to clean up after them.
Right.
They were not all
So you were like, I worked at Merle Norman. I'm way qualified for that.
I was between my Tart Pharmacy and my Merle Norman, I am totally qualified
Totally got
for
this.
I had absolutely nothing. I had nothing, but they needed a warm body, and I needed money.
Right.
I mean, even during emergency situations in our childhood,
I'm a
would
freezer.
just cross your arms and rock back and forth
Yeah.
while the whole house burned down around you. There's Karen. She wouldn't be able to react in any way, shape, or form.
So this
was an out of character,
completely out of character, and really I think it did a lot for me because I became very compassionate about these women.
Right.
And their situations and the fact that they had nobody. So we would go to work at 6:00 in the morning, and I was in Pennsylvania, so it was always cold, even in the summer. And we would get there at 6 to get them out of bed. There was a guy that worked overnights. So after they went to bed at night, he would come on and he just slept in the house to keep everybody safe.
Right.
And normally they wouldn't get up. They all had bathrooms either in their bedroom or right next to their bedroom. So if they had to go to the potty, they would get up and take themselves to the bathroom and go back to bed. It was never a problem. So we would get in there at 6. We would get them up. We would fix them breakfast. We would get them dressed for the day. And then a bus would come by and pick them up to take them to what they called work.
Like a day support program.
It was like a day support program. Right. They all had jobs, and they were, even if it was just putting this round circle onto this peg,
right?
It was something to help them. And so we packed their lunches, and off they went with their lunch boxes on this little bus. And then we would go home about 10. We had to clean after that. We had to sanitize everything before we left. And then we would go home and go to sleep for a couple hours. And then I would have to go back at about 2:00 in the afternoon. Okay. That's when they came back from work. We got them off the bus. We always had some type of activity that we would try to do with them, whether it was, we would try to get them to all watch TV together. But the one that liked to color, she didn't like TV. She only colored.
Right.
But we would take them on walks. We took them on, nature walks, which was hysterical. I learned to drive this huge bus.
Nice.
To take them around into town. I took them to doctor's appointments. That was interesting always. And we would do activities, and then we would start dinner. We would cook dinner for them. 2 of them didn't have any teeth at all left, so everything had to be put through a blender, which was beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
And so they would just it wasn't all together, so you would have like your whatever, let's say we were having meatloaf and it was all blended up together, and then we had peas, that would be a separate pile, and then the mashed potatoes or whatever.
Right.
So we would cook dinner, we would clean up, and then we would get them ready for bed, and then we would put them to bed.
Right.
So
then you'd go home after your
I'd
shift.
go home after my shift, and my shift ended about 9:00 at night.
So what year was that you
I
followed?
graduated from college in, 88.
Okay.
So this would have been 89.
Okay.
Probably 88, 89.
There was a lawsuit in North Carolina. It was called the Thomas S. lawsuit. And it was a gentleman named Thomas S. who sued the state of North Carolina because he was wrongfully put in a mental institution. He did not have a mental health diagnosis. He was, at the time, and I know this is politically not correct, but at the time they called it mentally retarded. It's called intellectually disabled now. But his family sued the state of North Carolina and won. So one of my jobs when I got out of college was being a case manager for these Thomas S. folks that lived in the state mental hospital in Cherry Hill, North Carolina. They identified all these people with a dual diagnosis, and you had to go as their case manager and find a community placement for them.
Yes.
So it sounded like Pennsylvania was on that same.
They were definitely on that same path. I'm
So
going
all
to tell
these
you,
little
it was
group
very
homes started
challenging.
popping
So
up.
I paint a really pretty picture of this.
No, it's
But
not.
I got to tell you, it was, the woman that was addicted to the coffee, she had some really rude habits. And one of those habits was smearing poop.
Oh, fun.
So and that's why we had to sanitize the bathroom constantly. But you would get her in the tub and try to wash her fingernails and stuff, and she didn't want it.
Right.
She, if you did something really mean to her, she would spit on her finger and flick it at you.
Oh, no.
So
Great job.
just so you know, it didn't last real long.
And that was after you graduated college?
I graduated
so you
college.
had a wonderful degree from
in business administration with management. Yes.
And
Daddy was so mad at me.
You scored a job.
Well, the first thing I did, I'm selling makeup, and he's like, "Are you kidding me? I paid for a college degree so you could sell some makeup."
Right.
And I said, "Daddy, first of all, I am a Southern girl, and I am up in Pennsylvania, and I might as well have been from Greece. Like, I couldn't communicate with people. They didn't understand me, and I was definitely a foreigner in that land.
Yeah.
So even trying to get hired, even saying, 'Are you hiring?' People like, 'I don't know what you're saying.' Then I'd be like, 'And I don't know how to say it your way, so now I'm just going to write it.'
And I have the job.
So, that was difficult enough. And then I didn't know what to do with my business degree.
Right.
I had no idea.
Right.
So, nobody tells you this is what you do after college. So and then I found this job, and he was just like shaking his head. And he was like, "First of all, you're not making enough money to even be above the poverty line." He said, "So now you're one of the most educated, poverty-stricken people Pennsylvania probably has."
Right.
Right.
And he was so frustrated with me. But I will tell you that by November, so I went up there in May. By November of that year, I had called him and said, "Daddy, you have to come and get me. I have to go home."
Yeah.
And he came. He said, "You get one of these.
Right.
That's it." And he came and rescued me. I think you came with me.
I did. I was with you. We drove a U-Haul truck from Franklin, Virginia to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I was scared to death on the highway. I don't know why, but Dad had put a mattress in the back for me to sleep in. Wanting me to get in the back. And I was
in the trailer?
Yes. And I was like, "Daddy, I am not."
With no windows?
No.
Oh, my God.
And not only that, but we didn't have a truck. He was just pulling it behind our car.
No,
The Volvo?
No, it was a U-Haul truck.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
Right. So he would have to get out, put me
Daddy.
in, lock the doors.
No.
Oh, my
and then
God.
drive.
That's child abuse.
No, Dad. No, I'm not doing it. Yeah. He
No.
was funny. But we got to move. We got to move back, and that all worked out. But
It
that
did.
was a crazy job for you.
It was really crazy, but
Yeah.
it made me. It probably bought me some empathy and compassion that I didn't have at the time.
Right.
So and then I knew there were things that I could do that I probably never thought that I could do.
Exactly.
Things that I could go through and do that I just didn't think that I could. Yeah. So, and ironically, at the time, my now husband, who I chased up to Lancaster, he was in school, but he needed a job. And so the guy that was doing overnights left. And so I got him the overnight job. So he would come on at 9 and relieve me.
Right.
And then I would go home and come back at 6 to relieve him.
Oh.
Nice.
So that for a long time,
Very
that's the only
convenient.
time that we saw each other. I would drive up and he would drive home. It was just like...
Well, I think it's important for you to step out of your comfort zone and learn
It was
something.
Completely out of my comfort
Completely,
zone.
but like you said, it made you more compassionate.
It
Yes.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really did.
So let me think. What was my craziest job? Okay. I have to say, I went to nursing school. Big shocker. And I went to a small Catholic nursing school in Norfolk, Virginia, for a while. And I think it was the second semester of my first year, my financial situation changed, and my Dad decided he was no longer going to pay for me to go to college. And the nuns that were there got me some money that they were able to pass over to me, but they didn't have enough to help me pay for room and board. So my classes were covered, but I had nowhere to eat or sleep.
You were homeless.
I was homeless, basically, if I wanted to continue to go to nursing school.
Right.
So they reached out. They had a box that held index cards, and they reached out to a family who used some of the nursing students as babysitters. And this family was looking for a nanny.
Yes.
And they said it's the perfect situation because they want a live-in nanny.
Okay.
So you'll live in their house, and they will pay for all of your food.
Okay.
Right. So I was like, well, okay, I'll do it. Well, this family... They were a great family, but they had one child, just the one. So they lived in an area in Norfolk called Ghent, and that was like a museum district, and it's where there was a very large population of Jewish doctors in that area, and it was a little bit of a mix between people who had been in the neighborhood before it had become affluent,
Right.
And these new, more affluent folks that were in the neighborhood. And I think there was kind of a battle trying to get some of the old people out so that it would just be this really nice museum district, fancy neighborhood.
Artsy
Right.
stuff, yeah.
So the first night I went in and I met the family and I met the little girl. She was, I think, 1. The first weekend I moved in, and I lived on the 3rd floor of their house. It was like one of the tall, skinny brownstone type homes.
Did you like kids?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had been a
That's
babysitter.
important. Babysat a lot.
Yeah, I've been a babysitter all the way through, so it's more than qualified. And I had babysit for families that had called in for extra money to the nursing school looking for babysitters.
Gotcha.
So I loved children, and I was very excited about it. But I go and I move all of my stuff in, and I'm in a house, and I'm in a neighborhood that I've never seen the likes of. And the family was out of town for the weekend. I had been introduced to one of the neighbors. He was a plumber. His name was Ray. Super nice man. It was just me, and I was taking care of their dog for the weekend. Mm-hmm. Everything's all fine and dandy until it starts to get dark outside. And then I start to get a little bit nervous because I see for the first time the neighbor boy that lives next door. And these houses are close enough together. They're like row houses.
Yeah.
They're close enough together where I could take a broomstick out the window and reach into the other person's
Right.
window. It's that close together.
Hey, neighbor, you have a plumber.
And then they went straight up, right? Because you were
Straight
on the
up.
third
I was on the 3rd floor, yeah. So crazy enough, the people that lived next door were not affluent doctors. Mm-hmm. They were some of the people that had originally been in the neighborhood, and it was a grandmother, grandfather, and their 2 grandsons. And their 2 grandsons dressed all in leather, had black hair, but one of the grandsons had elephant man's disease.
Oh.
So he looked a little off, which didn't bother me. I was in nursing school. I had seen some really rough things. But evidently they were in a gang.
Oh.
And the doctor that I lived with had said, you just need to make friends with them. It's one of those keep your enemies close situations because if they think that you're their friend, you're in no danger and they protect you.
Jeez.
But it still made
That's
me
a
really,
lot of pressure.
It is. It's a lot of pressure.
For us that grew up in this little mud puddle town, that we really weren't exposed to very many things. No.
And when they say gang, we think of like the rascal
gang,
little rascals gang.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's
let's get the gang together and go hang out.
Yeah, like Robin Hood Raiders.
Yeah. And they were different from, I mean, no big deal now because you see everything. But back then I was, young and afraid. I was in a house I'd never been in before, and I only knew the plumber that lived a couple houses down.
Hey, Ray!
The
family was out of
toilets
town.
Clogged, you were good to go.
I was good to go.
Mm-hmm. I think I would have just clogged the toilet and said, "Hey, Ray, toilet's clogged."
So the way this house was set up, the whole front of it had these big bay windows. Lots of big bay windows on the front. And just shutters, not even plantation shutters, but just tiny little shutters that you could close. And I can remember being in that area watching TV, and something caught out of the corner of my eye, and I looked out the window, and here's this really weird lady. And I take another look, and the lady stops right in front of that window and waves at me. And my mouth dropped open, and I froze.
Freaking out.
Froze. It was a man dressed as a woman. I had never seen that before.
Back then, that was not something that you saw every day.
And I immediately called my sister, and I
said, you have to
come over. You have to come over. I'm scared to death.
I was living with Darren in Virginia Beach.
What is happening? I was like, you're not going to believe this. I just saw Ray dressed as a woman.
Ray was
Ray.
Yes.
It was Ray.
He's confused about his plumbing.
Yes, no. And back then, that was just, I mean, nowadays, there are men that are dressed as women that are absolutely stunning. I know we've got one woman that works over at Ulta with the store close to us.
She's beautiful.
She is stunning.
Yes,
she is stunning.
Absolutely gorgeous.
She is She was born a man.
She's
But-
transgender.
And she's transgender. And she is she's lovely. So, but I had never seen that. This is back in the 80s. I just hadn't seen it. And it scared me to see
Yes.
the plumber down the street dressed as a woman.
Well, it is a surprise. I mean,
He
they
should
were
have told
here
me.
Meet Ray the plumber,
He
and
should
then
have
they
told
should have
me.
taken you aside
Yes,
and said,
he should have told me.
He's Ray, and then at night he's Ray now.
Right.
He
Exactly.
goes out at night.
He comes out at night.
Yeah. So that was really interesting. And that was quite a cultural shock to me.
Yeah.
The neighbor boys, the house next door actually ended up being condemned
Oh.
because they didn't have any working water,
Oh.
toilets, anything like that. And they came in. I was at home with the little girl. The mother, by the way, didn't work. She was pregnant
She was
with her
pregnant.
second
She
child.
was busy being pregnant.
She was busy being pregnant, and she would go off and do things, and then I would stay home with the little girl. And we were outside one day. The circus had come to town, and they were getting ready to do the parade where they walked down the street. So we were outside on the sidewalk waiting for the animals to come,
Right.
and 5 cop cars pull up. And I'm like,
is this
what?
part of the
And
parade?
one of the police officers was like, ma'am, you need to get back inside. You need to get back inside. I'm like, what is happening? But before I could even get the little girl back inside, they came out and swarmed that house and
Oh.
arrested the older brother for murder.
Oh my God. And you wonder.
I
You
know.
wonder why we're obsessed with
It
murder.
makes sense
Does
It
now.
does. It
makes
really
sense.
does. It
Yes.
just completely unnerved me.
Yes.
Unnerved me.
I can remember going over with Darren and I and sitting with you, and lots of times going and just watching movies with you when
Yeah.
they were all gone and you were by yourself.
Yeah, it was, but it kind of taught me to grow up and be a little bit more independent. And I learned a lot about the Jewish culture. This particular family liked to eat their red meat pretty much raw. They would just put it in the oven and warm it up a little bit, and then they would sit down and eat it, which is odd to me for a cardiologist. But either way, it was a very interesting time. And I want to say I've had a lot of jobs, but now that I'm grown up, I look back on a lot of jobs, and yeah, they've been kind of quirky
But they've
all
gotten
along
us
the
where
way.
we are.
But every single job I've ever had, I come out with a lifelong friend.
Yep.
I
And
come
and
out-
you learn something.
Yeah, I think I come out with huge life lessons. Even
Life
if they're life
lessons.
lessons that were damn hard to take.
Right.
I think I've learned that people enter your life sometimes as your friend, sometimes as your enemy to teach you a lesson.
Exactly.
But they're there for a reason.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but I think this has been a really good talk. I hope other people have enjoyed it. If you all have some quirky little jobs that you've had, please let us know. We'll talk about them for you.
We
You
will.
can email us at murder.sugarcoated@gmail.com. And also follow us on Facebook. We have a Sugar Coated Murder fan page, group page, whatever they're called. And we're also on Instagram, Sugar Coated Murder on Instagram. Please follow us and continue to listen to us. We love everybody.
Yes,
And
we
we
so
hope y'all are having a
appreciate-
great day.
We appreciate everybody.
And y'all stay sweet.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.